Iran just struck a nuclear power plant during a ceasefire, not a military convoy, not a radar installation, not a forward operating base. The Baraka nuclear energy facility in Abu Dhabi's Al Dhafra region, the Arab world's first and only nuclear power plant, supplying roughly a quarter of the UAE's entire electricity grid, took an Iranian drone strike this morning while a ceasefire was technically still in effect. The drone hit an electrical generator on the outer perimeter, ignited a fire, and walked Iran across a line that the international community reserves for an extraordinarily short list of actions. The IAEA has confirmed no radiation release and all 4 reactors remain operational, but that is not the story. The story is that Iran launched a drone at a nuclear power plant while negotiators were still at the table, and the American military response has been immediate, visible, and specifically configured for what comes next. F-16, CJ Vipers, and F-35s are now on continuous combat air patrols over the Strait of Hormuz. The force posture of Project Freedom, 15,000 personnel, over 100 aircraft, is shifting from blockade enforcement to strike readiness. I'm going to tell you exactly what the Baraka strike means strategically. Why the specific aircraft the United States has put airborne tells you precisely what the opening phase of resumed hostilities looks like, what Iran's actual remaining threat capability consists of after everything this conflict has already taken from it, and why the UAE's quietly confirmed role as an active combatant changes the coalition picture in ways that the public framing of this conflict has consistently understated. Stay with me, because the dominoes that have been stacking for weeks are closer to falling this morning than at any previous point in this conflict. Let me be direct about what striking a nuclear power plant during a ceasefire communicates, because the target selection carries a strategic message that goes beyond the physical damage the drone produced. The Baraka facility is not a military target in any conventional analytical framework. It is civilian energy infrastructure whose destruction or radiological compromise would affect millions of people across the UAE, and potentially beyond its borders depending on wind patterns and dispersal geometry. Striking it during a ceasefire, when the diplomatic framework is formally in place and negotiations are nominally ongoing, is a signal calibrated for a specific audience. It is not a signal to the United States Navy, whose operational posture it does not materially affect. It is a signal to the Gulf partners whose continued alignment with the American-led coalition is the diplomatic foundation that gives Project Freedom its regional legitimacy. Iran is telling Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, and every other Gulf capital watching this morning that the ceasefire framework does not constrain Iranian targeting, that civilian infrastructure, including nuclear facilities, is within the operational scope Iran is willing to execute against, and that the price of coalition membership includes exposure to strikes that the ceasefire was supposed to preclude. That is a coercion signal directed at the political will of the Gulf partners, not a military signal directed at American force capability. And the American response, putting F-16 CJ Vipers specifically on combat air patrol, is the counter signal that tells you the coercion calculation is not going to produce the result Iran intended. The F-16 CJ variant is not a general-purpose fighter. It is the dedicated suppression of enemy air defenses platform, the Wild Weasel, built specifically to locate, target, and destroy surface-to-air missile systems. Its primary sensor suite is designed to detect, classify, and geolocate radar emissions from Iranian air defense nodes. Its primary weapons load is configured for harm anti-radiation missiles that home on those radar emissions and destroy the systems producing them. When you see F-16 CJ Vipers going on continuous combat air patrol over the Strait of Hormuz in the hours after a nuclear power plant strike, you are not looking at a defensive posture. You are looking at the leading edge of the strike package that opens the next phase of offensive operations. The CJ goes first because it clears the radar and missile environment that everything coming behind it depends on to operate without being shot down. Its appearance on continuous patrol is the canary in the coal mine that tells you the targeting sequence for resumed strikes has been activated and the preparatory phase is underway. But if you think the F-16 CJ's role is the most operationally significant element of the current American force posture, stay with me. Because the intelligence architecture being built above the strait right now is what turns the CJ's SEAD capability into a systematic deconstruction of whatever Iranian air defense Iran has managed to reconstitute during the ceasefire period. The RC-135 rivet joint is the intelligence backbone of this entire operational theater. A converted Boeing 707 airframe carrying a crew of signals intelligence specialists whose specific function is collecting, classifying, and, most critically, geolocating the electronic emissions produced by Iranian radar systems, drone launch sites, ballistic missile batteries, and command and control nodes. It operates at 40,000 feet. It builds the targeting picture before a single weapon is fired. Every radar Iran has been rebuilding during the ceasefire period that activates its emissions to track American aircraft produces a geolocated position in the rivet joints collection database. That database becomes the target list that the F-16CJ's HARM missiles are programmed against when the order comes. The E-2D Advanced Hawkeye operating from carrier decks adds the airborne early warning layer that completes the operational picture. It tracks over 2,000 simultaneous targets at ranges beyond 300 nautical miles, providing the battle management architecture that coordinates the strike packages, the combat air patrols, the tanker orbits, and the defensive systems into a single integrated operational picture. You do not put RC-135s and E-2Ds into continuous operation alongside CJ Vipers because you are managing a ceasefire. You put them there because you are building the targeting architecture for what the ceasefire is about to become. The UAE's role in this conflict deserves direct and specific analytical attention because the public framing has consistently treated Abu Dhabi as a passive recipient of Iranian aggression rather than an active participant in the coalition's offensive operations, and that framing is now demonstrably incorrect. The strike on the Lavon Island oil refinery in the Persian Gulf, one of Iran's 4 largest crude export hubs, knocked offline for months with a fire visible from offshore vessels, was executed using Western-made fighters and drones operated by UAE forces. Abu Dhabi has not publicly confirmed the strikes. Iran immediately characterized it as an enemy attack and launched retaliatory barrages against Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Kuwait. The operational signature, Western Platform Precision Strike, timed to coincide with the Trump administration's ceasefire announcement, is the signature of a coordinated coalition action, not an independent UAE initiative. The UAE has intercepted over 2,800 missiles, drones, and cruise missiles since February 28th. Israeli Iron Dome batteries have been confirmed on UAE soil by the American ambassador to Israel. THAAD and Patriot batteries have been running continuous reload cycles for weeks. And Israeli, American, and Emirati air defense systems are now operating as an integrated coalition architecture on UAE territory. That is not a nation sheltering behind American protection. That is a nation that has become the third confirmed combatant in a coalition that the public framing has been describing as a bilateral American-Iranian confrontation. The strategic significance of UAE's active combatant status extends beyond the immediate military picture into the diplomatic architecture of the Gulf. Every Gulf partner watching Abu Dhabi absorb 2,800 intercepted strikes, quietly execute offensive operations against Iranian oil infrastructure, and continue escalating its coalition commitment, despite Iranian retaliation, is receiving a demonstration that the cost of active participation is survivable, and that the cost of staying outside the coalition while Iran targets your infrastructure regardless is not. And what Iran's actual remaining threat capability consists of after everything this conflict has already destroyed is where the honest threat assessment diverges most sharply from the instinct to either dismiss or catastrophize what the IRGC can still do. The IRGC Aerospace Force is not operating from a position of strategic strength at this point in the conflict. Its conventional naval capacity has been systematically destroyed. Its underground missile cities were addressed in the May 7th and 8th counterstrikes. Its fast attack boat doctrine has been demonstrated as insufficient against Apache helicopters and directed energy systems. What remains as the primary operational tool is the Shahed drone inventory, and specifically the Shahed 136, the one-way loitering munition with a range of approximately 1,000 nautical miles, a 50-kilogram warhead, and a low-altitude flight profile designed to complicate radar acquisition. The drone that struck Baraka this morning was this category of weapon. It costs approximately $25,000 to produce. It is the asymmetric tool Iran engineered specifically to impose costs on conventionally superior forces by exploiting the cost asymmetry between the drone and the interceptor systems used to defeat it. A Shahed at $25,000 being engaged by an AMRAAM at over $1 million is the economic equation Iran's drone strategy was designed to exploit. That equation remains partially valid against conventional interceptor-dependent defensive architectures. It becomes invalid against directed energy systems, against high-powered microwave platforms that can defeat drone swarms without expending interceptor inventory, and against the Apache helicopter's cannon and Hellfire combination that engages drones at costs per round that eliminate the asymmetry entirely. Stay with me, because the Fatah 110 ballistic missile represents the second remaining Iranian offensive card, and understanding its specific capabilities tells you what the threat picture looks like if the IRGC decides to escalate from drone harassment to direct precision strikes against coalition infrastructure. The Fatah 110 is a road-mobile precision ballistic missile with a baseline range of approximately 150 to 200 nautical miles that Iran has extended in modified variants to ranges that have demonstrated the ability to reach Diego Garcia, A road mobile system is inherently more survivable against airstrikes than fixed infrastructure because its launch position changes between strikes, requiring continuous ISR coverage to locate before it can be targeted. The Fatah 110's precision guidance makes it the weapon Iran would use for direct strikes against specific high-value targets, power plant reactors rather than perimeter generators, carrier flight decks rather than escort vessels, command infrastructure rather than logistics nodes. The distinction between this morning's Baraka strike, a drone against a perimeter generator, and a Fatah 110 salvo against the reactor buildings themselves is the distinction between a coercion signal and an attempt at catastrophic infrastructure destruction. The American force posture being assembled right now is specifically configured to address both threat categories. The CJ Vipers suppress the radar environment that guides Iranian missiles. The Patriot and THAAD batteries intercept the ballistic threats that survive the SEED suppression. The directed energy systems handle the drone swarms that attempt to saturate the point defense layer. The F-35Cs from the Abraham Lincoln and the F-35Bs from the Marine Expeditionary Unit's assault ships provide the precision strike capability that addresses Iranian mobile launch systems before they can execute the Fatah 110 employment that the drone strike this morning may have been designed to precede.